Okay, good evening, Rabbi. Tonight we're going to talk about more about the Pesach holiday coming up, Bezat Hashem, coming up in 2 weeks. Last week we talked about some interesting things about how to handle the Pesach holiday, and here we're going to continue even more. So I want to tell you first of all something interesting, right? That when it comes to leavened products that you're not allowed to have on Pesach, which is chametz called, right? There's 5 species which the Gemara says, Talmud and Masechet Pesachim, they become leavened. What are those 5 species? Wheat, barley, rye, spelt, and oats. Only those 5 species become leavened. So what does that mean? Only chametz only applies to those things, doesn't apply to anything else. So the Rambam also explains some interesting things. You know what he says? That the truth is that wheat is like, everybody knows what wheat is, but barley, so he says barley and the other ones, they're like subcategories, right? They're types of subcategories. So they're like really like, according to that, it's like 2 species, or 3 species, not 5, but whatever it is anyway. The point is that those are the ones that we have to watch out for. As opposed to what? As opposed to legumes, which do not become chametz. They never do. So what does that mean? What are we talking about, legumes? We're talking about rice, first of all. Right? Rice is not chametz. Why would you think that it is? Because when you cook it, it rises. So the question is, why is it rising? Usually when something rises, a grain, it's because it's becoming chametz, it's becoming leaven. That's the process that takes place. So rice does rise, just like wheat and barley and so forth and so on. What happens is that it's not called chametz. The truth is that there's a machloket, there's a dispute in the Talmud regarding that. There's the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says that rice is also considered to be like one of the 5 grains. In other words, one of the grains that becomes chametz. But the halacha is not like that, the Gemara says. Where is that? The Masechet Pesachim, Daf Kuf Yud Daled, says over there that even though Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says that rice is chametz, but the rabbis don't agree with that. So therefore the halacha is not like him. We go according to the majority, this is like a minority opinion. It's a single opinion against everybody else. So all the other ones, what they say is that rice, even though it does rise, but it doesn't become chametz, it doesn't become leaven. So then what happens to it? Why does it rise? So it's like says the Gemara that it's a form of like decay. It's decaying. It's starting to decay. So this is what causes it to rise, but it's not like a fermentation kind of thing, which makes it into chametz. So therefore, even though it rises, it's not chametz. So therefore, halacha is, according to the Shulchan Aruch, according to the Rambam, according to all the Rishonim, all the earlier authorities, that rice is allowed to have on Pesach. No problem with that. There's also other types of legumes that are similar to rice, like peas, like lentils, and we call it beans, all kinds of things like this. Yeah. Corn, chickpeas, tchina, right? All kinds of things like this. They're all types of legumes that resemble rice. So, as we said, according to halakha, you're allowed to have all these things. No problem, because they don't become leavened. But what happened was that as time went on, the Ashkenazim especially, they took on this custom to avoid having legumes. They started to forbid that. So the truth is, that several Ashkenazi authorities themselves said what this was a foolish thing, that they were observing this. Why is it foolish? Because the reason why they did it, why they took on this custom not to eat rice, it's not because it says in the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, that he says it's leaven, because everybody knows that halacha is not like that. But what they say is like this, for a different reason. They say that the same sacks that are being used to move around the rice, right, to ship it, is the same sack that is being used for wheat as well. So what happens is that the wheat gets left over in the sack, and the rice gets put in there, and then when you dump it out, wheat also comes with it. That's what happens. So since the wheat comes with it, it's going to be chametz, because once wheat gets wet, it becomes chametz. In a matter of 18 minutes, whatever it is, it becomes chametz. So this is the reason why Ashkenazim, they said, you know what, since there's always like traces of wheat in those sacks where they have the rice, so we shouldn't use that for Pesach. This is the reason why they took it on. So what happened was that even several of their authorities themselves said it was nonsense. Why nonsense? What's the reason why it's nonsense? So it says Rashi, it says, "Zeh minhag shtut." You know what that means? It's ridiculous minhag, ridiculous custom. Why ridiculous? Because any fool knows how to tell, between a kernel of rice and a kernel of wheat. No, nobody's going to make such a mistake like that. So it's ridiculous. Same thing, by the way, said by the Rabbi, the Rosh. The Rosh also says this. I'm sorry, not the Rosh, the Tur, his son, right? And Rabbi Meir B. Rothenburg. They all say, all three of them, they say that this is nonsense. All Ashkenazim, these rabbis. So even though these three rabbis said it was nonsense, nevertheless, the Ashkenazim took it on as a custom. So they forbade to eat legumes for Pesach, rice and all the other ones as well. So what happens is like this. Now the Ashkenazim, they took it on in a very rigid way. What does that mean, rigid? That they made it into like a neder, into like an oath, so that means that you can't really open up this prohibition for the Ashkenazim. Even though the reasons doesn't apply, nevertheless you can't open it up. You can't prevent them to eat that. That's the bottom line. That's what it says in all the books. So the Ashkenazim are not able to permit that, unless until Mashiach comes, maybe, then they'll permit it. I don't know, whatever it is, right? Until then, they're not going to permit it. So they don't eat that stuff, basically. That's what it is, So the truth is, the Ashkenazim, they're very limited regarding what they can eat on Pesach. It's like meat and potatoes, basically, right? Eggs. It's like the staple foods for Pesach, for the Ashkenazim in the old days. Now they have all kinds of technology. They make all kinds of foods, all kinds of interesting things. They have magic ways of making, all kinds of products that look different, that taste different, all kinds of stuff.
Well, the explanation from the Mashgiach from Habizgah, you remember I asked him once, it was Passover, and I took the family there. Okay, I explain it to you. The Ashkenazim, because they suffered in life much more, we keep the tradition more strict.
Yeah, they're definitely suffering, from not eating the foods, the good foods. But no, seriously speaking, though, that's the way it is for them. So that's what they do.
Is it decreed this way, or
it's a custom? It's a custom. They took it on, so now you can't change it now.
Will God punish them if they eat rice and?
Well, the truth is, that a person has to keep his customs. So there is an issue there. Of course, a person has to keep it, unless you move to a different country, and then your customs may change according to that. That's it. We'll talk about that in the continuation of the lecture. But
the girls that converted, did they become Ashkenazim or Sephardi?
For some reason now the Sephardi seems to be in the moda in the fashion.
So they want to.
Everybody I meet wants now to become Sephardi. I don't know.
Well, one of them married off to a guy in Brooklyn.
Right. Yes.
Is he Ashkenazi or Sephardi?
Yeah, that one she took on Sephardi, but then when you marry, you have to take your husband's custom.
I see.
That's the way it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
So that's the
she
way it
has
works.
to convert again.
I guess you can say that. Right, exactly. When you get married, you have to go with your husband. That's the way it works.
Is that allowed now with the left-wing movement, with the Me Too?
Me too, me too.
Yeah, Me Too, yeah.
Me too, me three. So, the problem is, for those ladies who like to get married often, so they have to, 3 times they have to change their custom, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
It can be quite confusing.
I think that's what happened to Elizabeth Taylor. She became a Jew, then she converted back.
Okay, maybe. So anyway, right, that's the idea. So the Ashkenazim, they have no way to play around with that. But okay, that's but there is also a question, by the way, to ask regarding the Ashkenazim as well. The question is like this. Okay, fine. In the countries that they lived in, which was like Poland, and Germany, and places like that, these were Ashkenazi countries. Everybody knew that everybody was Ashkenazi there. So, but once they move out and they go to a different country, the question is, does the custom go with them? Or now do they have a new custom? How does that work, right? This is the question that has to be asked. So the truth is, that this question was actually very relevant recently. What happened was that the Ashkenazim all of a sudden came to Eretz Israel. Like they started to migrate from Europe. This was about 250 years ago. They started to migrate. Before that, prior to that, there really was no Ashkenazim pretty much in Eretz Israel. It was like almost zero. Like, just a few here, a few there.
How long have they existed?
Huh?
How long have they existed?
Well, the whole Ashkenazi thing is like, over 1,000 years. 1,000 years plus, whatever,
So is it legitimate? Honestly, is it
it's legitimate because, it's basically, it's a country that, has rabbis and they institute the customs of the place.
Yeah.
That's the way it works, But the question is like this, right? That now, if you're going to move back to Eretz Israel, which a lot of them already came back, as we said. Before that, by the way, there wasn't, as we said, there was no Ashkenazim almost in Eretz Israel before they started to come back. Why do I tell you that? You know what the reason is, by the way, why Ashkenazim were not coming in before that? Because the Ottoman Empire was ruling at that time. The Ottoman Empire, the Turks. Erdogan, Yimach Shemo. This guy, right? So people like this, right? So they were ruling over Israel, and they did not allow Ashkenazi Jews to come in. Only Sephardi Jews. Why is that? Can you imagine why? Can you guess? So you know what it is? They didn't believe that the Ashkenazi Jews were Jewish. They thought they were like Europeans because they were light-skinned, whatever. They said, "You guys are not real Jews. Give me a break." They didn't believe that they were Jewish. This is the reason why they wouldn't let them in. So until the Ottoman Empire fell, the Ashkenazi Jews couldn't come in big numbers to Eretz Israel. Once it fell, then they were able to come. Once the British Empire took over and so forth and so on, right? That era. Once the British Empire took over Eretz Israel, then they were able to come in. So what happened was, once they started coming in, the truth is that Eretz Israel was always a Sephardi country. What I mean to say is that the customs of Eretz Israel historically were always Sephardi. The community there was always Sephardi. That goes, by the way, for like 2,000 years. The customs were Sephardi over there. So what happened was that now, all of a sudden, coming in a big influx of Ashkenazim, into the Eretz Israel. So what happened was, little by little, their numbers are gaining. So in the originally, what happened was that the Sephardim were the majority. Obviously, like total majority. Huge majority. But as time going along, Ashkenazi community became quite large. So what happened was that they had a question now to answer in halakha, which was, should we convert and become Sephardi, or just remain Ashkenazi? That was their question. Why did they ask this question? What's the reason why this question is relevant? The reason is because when you are moving to a country which has a certain custom, you have to adopt those customs. That's what you have to do. You can't bring your old customs with you, like luggage, baggage, baggage claim. You can't bring that with you. Custom only lasts while you're living in the country that you live in. Where does it say that? It says in Shut Avkat Rochel, Siman Reishut Bet, Maran Bet Yosef over there, he writes, he's the author of that book, right? He says over there that when people move from one country to another, they have to adopt the customs of the host country that they move to. So long as that they're staying there, they're not going back to their old country. They have no plans to go back, right? So what happens is the Ashkenazim now had a dilemma, right? We came to a Sephardi country, so apparently we should convert and become Sephardi, right? And then on the other hand, maybe not, maybe not. So the truth is, right, that they had a bet din about this, bet din gakatis. They did a court on this. They took a vote. So the vote came out 2 against 1. That what? That they should not change. They should not convert. There was one rabbi, Rabbi Shmuel Misalant, Shmuel Salanter. He voted that they should convert, but he was a minority, so therefore they lost.
So was that the prelude of this whole Ashkenazi movement?
No. This is just one of the one of the sagas of the series. You know what I mean? One episode, right? Whatever you want to call it. This started way back, right before that, obviously. So what happens is like this, right? That they decided to stay Ashkenazi, and so you have to ask a question: why? Why did they decide such a thing like that? So the truth is, they say that there's a book called Panim Meirot. One rabbi, Ashkenazi rabbi, he says that the Ashkenazim, shouldn't change their customs, wherever they go. So even though it says in Avkat Rochel Maran, he writes over there they should change their customs, but they weren't according to Panim Meirot, who was Ashkenazi rabbi, and according to him, you're not supposed to change your customs. So they went like that, and they stayed the way they were. But the truth is, honestly, even though they didn't change everything, they did change some things, like towards the Sephardi side. Some prayers, they adopted some things. And the reason why they did it was because they didn't want to look totally rebellious, like they're rebelling, They wanted to look like they're somewhat, compromising. You know what I mean? To show some reverence, to show some respect. Whatever, So they did change some things. But nevertheless, they stayed the way they were. So, therefore, the Ashkenazim, this is the way they do. What does that mean? That wherever they go, and there's a community over there, Ashkenazi community, with a Bet Din and everything, they don't change their customs. So the truth is, that this only applies when you have a community there with a Bet Din. But if you go as an individual, that's something else. If you're going as an individual, you don't have a community, you don't have a Bet Din. So then you really should, change to the host country that you're in, because you're not going to be able to keep independent status by yourself. You're gonna be like over flooded. You're gonna be over like a bulldozer. They're gonna bulldoze you. You're not gonna be able to stand like that. So therefore, there's no choice. In a case like that, really, there's no choice. You will have to change. But what they're saying is, we have a community, we have a Bet Din, we have numbers, we have people, we got a whole big crowd, Jamat, and that's good enough. We're okay. We're doing good. So therefore, they didn't change. But okay, that's interesting for the Ashkenazim. That's the way they go. So what does that mean? The Ashkenazim in Eretz Israel, they also don't eat legumes. They also don't eat Kytniot, because they still stayed like they were in Europe. They chose to be that way. That's it's their decision. What can you do? They chose what they chose, right? Who can tell them what to do, right? So that's the way it goes. So now, that's regarding Ashkenazim. But when you get to the other side, the Sephardim, it becomes a little bit more complicated. Why? Why is it complicated? The complication is like this: that the Sephardim have different denominations. What I mean to say is like different communities. You have the Persians, you have the Moroccans, you have the Bukharians, and you have Iraqis, and the Georgians are also Sephardi, basically. So all these communities are all Sephardi communities. What does that mean, Sephardi communities? They do Sephardi customs. That doesn't mean, by the way, that they come from Spain. That's not the issue. People think, Sephardi is only somebody who comes from Spain. That's not really true. Sephardi means you have Sephardi customs. You do like the customs of the Sephardim. That's what it means to be Sephardi. So, all these communities, now what happened was that when they came, each one had their own custom in their respective places that they lived in. So there were some Sephardi communities that took on also not to eat legumes, not to eat rice, just like the Ashkenazim. Where was that? Like, for instance, Morocco, right? That's the most famous example. In Morocco, these were like very Sephardi people over there, But on the other hand, they took on the custom not to eat rice and also not to eat sugar as well. Sugar they also didn't have. Can you imagine? What's wrong with sugar? They were afraid that it gets mixed in with other things, So they didn't want to use it. So what happens is that the Moroccans. Now the question is, if a Moroccan goes to Eretz Israel, over there their custom was not to eat, but now he went to Eretz Israel all of a sudden. Or let's say he went to America, to Montreal, over there they have a big community over there, Moroccans. Montreal, Toronto, they also have something there, or a place like that, right, where there are more Moroccans over there. So you go to a place like that, what happens now? Do you have to keep the Moroccan customs? Or now are you a different creation altogether, right? Or if a Moroccan goes to Eretz Israel, he moves over there. By the way, the largest group, they say, in Israel is Moroccans. 600,000 people, Moroccan Jews in Israel. Very large group. So, what happens when you go to Eretz Israel? So the truth is, according to what we said, according to Maran Avkat Rachel, he writes that once you go from one country to another, you're not bound anymore with the old customs. You're done with that, because it only applies where you live. The whole point of the custom is that it applies to a certain place. It doesn't apply everywhere. It's not universal.
Makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. But there are some customs, by the way, which are universal. There are some like that, but this is definitely not one of them. So anyway, what happens is that now they came to Eretz Israel. Each one has his own custom. The Persians, the Moroccans, the Syrians. This one, that one, all this stuff, Iraqis, blah, blah, blah. So, then what is the real custom? Of what should they do? How should they behave when they move to Eretz Israel? Or they move to America, North America, whatever it is. So the truth is, the answer is, according to Avkat Rachel, as we said, that you should not keep your customs and change them and go according to the country that you came to. So therefore, Maran Rabbi, my rabbi, used to say that the Moroccans, and all the other communities as well, the Sephardi communities, they should take on, when they come to Eretz Israel, they should take on the customs of Eretz Israel. Forget about their old customs, whatever they had before. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, who cares about that? Now you're in a new place, right? Forget about that stuff already. Leave it behind you. That's the idea, right? So Maran used to say, all the Sephardim, except the Ashkenazim, as we said, because they're a separate group, they have their own rabbis, they have their own way, they have their own approach to this. But when it comes to the Sephardim, they don't have really their own approach, because they're really like one big group under the Sephardi banner. So therefore he said that they should all take on the customs of Eretz Israel, Sephardi Eretz Israel customs. So therefore they should eat already, legumes, Kytniot. And therefore, right, according to that, the Georgian Jews as well, should be eating rice in Eretz Israel. That's pretty clear, right? And the Moroccans as well. But a lot of them are afraid to do that, by the way. If you go to them and tell them, eat some rice, they'll tell you, oh my God, I can't do that. It should be Mama Papa, my grandfather, my father, from the old country, from the motherland. And they'll tell you, I can't change that. So the truth is that you can, because you're already in a different country. The customs don't go with you something like a piece of luggage. It doesn't work like that. It gets canceled once you go there. By the way, what's the reason why the customs don't go with you everywhere you go? Okay, just take them with you, Always be like that. So you know what the answer is? The answer is because the rabbis didn't want people taking customs from place to place. And the reason is because it's going to cause machloket, it's going to cause fights, Pinchas, Avram, right? This kind of, right? Yeah. They fight. Why? This one says, no, this is the right custom. No, this one's the right custom. Start fighting with each other, hitting each other with sidur, whatever. I don't know. You said, I don't know. I don't know exactly what it was over there.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Whatever it is, they start getting into fights, and it makes a big ruckus, So you have no peace. So therefore, the rabbi said, you know what? When you move to a different country, make sure that you change your customs, because otherwise you're going to be fighting with them all the time. You know?
Isn't that why the Romans adopted Christianity at the end?
That what? Because what?
They didn't want chaos. Like they wanted unity. So
Yeah, well, that's already something else. I mean, the truth is that they didn't really adapt it so much. They adapted it. What does that mean? They changed it. This religion that they're practicing today was basically made by Constantine. He was the one who made this religion. The emperor, the Caesar.
So why are we blaming Yeshua for anything?
Because no, he was an accomplice. Like when you have robbers, one guy drove them to the bank. One guy broke the vault, right? One guy broke. So each one did his.
If he was alive and he saw
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah, he would be flipping around. But the truth is, he deserves it because once you start going off, there's no limit to how far you can go off.
Right.
By the way, they say the sages, about that, something very interesting, that a person is not only judged about what he did in his lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
They judge him for that too, right? Obviously, but they also judge him about the repercussions of what he did, the results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of
what he did even years after. In other words, they say, "Oh, see, this is what you caused. When you started this, 100 years later, you did that, resulted in that.
Mm-hmm.
So when a person gets corrupted, the corruption can go for many, many years. And he's judged for all of that. Why? Because he caused everything.
Yeah.
That's
just like the Clintons, they started this garbage.
Absolutely.
That we have to.
They're the ones who started the ball rolling. Yes, of course. Yeah. So what do you call it? So the truth is, that it was made by Constantine. It's a Constantine religion, basically. The guy thought he was God, He was some kind of, he was the first, he was the one who founded that religion.
Yeah, but
all those customs, they made, Sunday, this or that. They didn't have those customs.
Forget about the rituals, though.
Yeah.
They're praying to him.
Right. What I'm saying is...
They're praying to...
but what I'm saying is that all the structure, was founded by him. He was the one who founded everything. If you believe in Constantine, that's good for you, but if you don't believe that he was a god, he made himself into a god,
So
he was the first.
Why are they praying to a Jew then?
I don't know, God.
You know what I'm saying?
Whatever it is, right? But the point is, right, that this guy,
make any sense.
He was a master. He was like a first pope, basically. That's what he was,
So he used him as a martyr.
Right, they found it. They built it on that, but they start all kinds of pagan stuff. Basically, it's a pagan religion. The holidays are all pagan.
Yeah.
They put together all the garbage. Piece of garbage over here, piece of garbage over there, put everything together, and one big garbage heap. So, that's what it is. And you can see, by the way, the results today, what the results are. Very clear. Child molestation, all the nonsense that goes on over there. You know what I'm talking about, right? Homosexual, child molestation. That's their way of life. Okay, so anyway, right? Getting back to what we were talking about. So, as we said, that the rabbi was saying, that they should all adopt one custom, uniform, Israeli custom for everybody. This is the way it should be done, So, therefore, the proper way to do it is to do it like this. That every Sephardi Jew that comes to Eretz Israel, you are now not anymore what you were before. So you and me, right? We both lived in Eretz Israel, no? I lived there a long time. You should go a short time. Hopefully we'll both go back very soon. But the point is, right, that are we now? What are we? You and me, right? Are we Georgian, or are we Israeli, or American? Right? That's the question. So the truth is that I'm definitely Israeli.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you why. Because I'm planning to go back.
Yeah.
A person was
what are you going to do different than what you're doing here?
That's what I'm saying. So since I'm going back in my mind, I'm going back. Like either today or tomorrow. So therefore, I still keep what it was over there. That's pretty much it, right? But Okay, so when it comes to Eretz Israel, it's pretty clear. If a person who's Israeli has to keep Israeli customs. That's pretty clear. But over there, customs are pretty clear. The ancient customs of Israel, Yerushalmi, Jerusalem customs, Sephardi customs, they're pretty clear. They're pretty well documented. But the question is, what about if you go to a place like America, or you go to a place like Canada or Europe somewhere, some country like that. So what happens is that, like, you come to New York, right? How many communities do we have here? Jewish communities in New York? Like, probably not less than 50, right? This community, that community, Persians, Georgians, then we have the Bukharians, right? Then we have the Germans, then we have the, and every kind of community you can imagine, right? Hasidic, right? Chabad, Satmar, right? Whatever you want to write. How far do you want to go? As far as you want to go. There's no end to it. At least 50 communities, probably, you'll find. That's just the minimum. So if that's the case, in America you have like at least 50, probably 100. So then what's the custom of America? What's the custom of New York? Right? You have so many communities doing different customs. So what is the custom of America? One time I think I made a video on this, by the way, on this topic. What is the custom of America? So the truth is, that America has no custom. You know why? What's the reason why? Because there's too many of them. In other words, there's no uniform custom in any area. Everything is different by different communities. So what does that mean? There's something written in the book of the Marshdam, the response of the Marshdam. The Marshdam was a big Chacham who lived a couple hundred years ago. He lived in a place called Saloniki, which was in Greece. So over there in Saloniki, Salonika, there was a huge Jewish community there from all over the world. They came there, gathered there. It made like a big community there, large. Just like America. Melting pot, Came from everywhere. For some reason they liked it over there, it was a nice situation over there, the situation was good. They made a big community, so they had like tons of communities, just like we have here. This Persians, the Bukharians, this Syrians, this Moroccans, blah, 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 no end to it, right? So, they asked the question to this rabbi, the Maharshdam, what is the custom of this place, of Salonika, of Saloniki? So you know what his answer was? His answer was, there is no custom. What does that mean there's no custom? Because there's so many of them, so therefore none of them are really binding. You're not obligated to keep any of them. You know why? Because a custom which obligates you is only a custom which is in all that town or all that country that you live in. Otherwise, it doesn't obligate you. If it's a split custom, different groups, different strokes for different folks, doesn't work like that. That's not called custom anymore. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? It doesn't obligate you. You can do it if you want, but nobody can obligate you. The only way we can obligate you for custom is everybody does it there in that place. Or alternatively, we could say, right, that also, let's say you have a Sephardi community, Ashkenazi community. So Ashkenazi, everybody does like this, and Sephardi, everybody does like that. That would also be binding for each group respectively. But when it comes to a place like this, which has 50 communities, different customs for each one, so then none of them are really binding or obligation for anybody. So therefore, the question is, okay, fine, you told me that there's no obligation. So then, practically speaking, what should I do? Whose custom should I take? So, the answer, what they say in the poskim? They say in a case like that, the poskim say that the only custom you really have to keep is Shulchan Aruch, the Jewish code of law. In other words, just keep the same basic halachot. But all these customs which vary from community to community, you're not obligated to keep any of them. Because none of them is really like a dominant custom that applies to everybody. So therefore, according to that, right now let's come back to New York City, right? New York in 2021. What's going on over here? We have 50 communities at least, if not more. Go to Brooklyn, go to Monsey, go here, go there. Each one has its own customs. So what happens now? according to what we just said, none of those customs are obligation. So therefore, according to that, are you allowed to eat Kytniot, legumes on Pesach? The answer is yes. If you're Sephardi, yes. Why is that? Because nobody can tell you, oh, you're a Georgian Jew, Now, what about the Georgian Jews? The Georgian Jews, they have an interesting split, dichotomy. What's the split? The split is that some of them, right, most of the Georgian Jews did not eat rice on Pesach. I guess for the same reason that the Ashkenazim, because of the issue with the sacks, maybe it gets mixed up. When it comes to corn, which is also a legume, they do eat. Corn they eat, rice they don't eat. By the way, there's another reason why that is. Because by the Georgian Jews, corn is more of a staple than rice. They don't eat rice every day, the Georgians. But corn, chadi, things like this, they eat like every day. It's more like a regular thing. So, but when it comes to the Bukharians and Persians and the Syrians, they eat rice all the time. For them, like a rice is a staple, So therefore, they eat rice on Pesach too. But the point is, right, that they're both considered to be legumes: corn, rice, chickpeas, whatever it is. All these things are the same. So if that's the case, now I came, right, as we said, by the way, there was also one Georgian town that people told me they used to eat rice over there on Pesach. So there were some places where they did. It wasn't totally uniform as well there as well. But now you came to America, so what happens over here? Now I'm not Georgian anymore. You tell me, Georgian, I remember this guy over here, right? One time, he comes to me. I'm not going to mention his name, right? So he comes to me and tells me, he says, what, don't you keep Georgian customs? It says, you're Georgian, So I told him, I said, excuse me, but let me show you some books about that. Not exactly what you think, like, he thinks, everywhere you go, you're still Georgian. You went to Eretz Israel, you're Georgian. You came to America, you're still Georgian. You went to Europe, you went to Austria, you're still Georgian over there. You went to Amsterdam, you're still Georgian over there. It doesn't work like that. You are not Georgian once you leave Georgia. That's the way it is, right? According to customs, I'm talking about. Regarding customs. I'm not talking about eating khachapuri. That's something else. Kishmishiani. That stays with you for life. That's something else. Right? But when it comes to these things, customs, you're not obligated anymore to keep any of them. The Georgians used to do this. Yeah, okay, that was in Georgia. I already left. I'm not going back there. You think I'm planning to go back? No way. So I'm not obligated. That applies to every community like that. Same thing. So therefore, for a person now, any Sephardi community, which is in America or in Israel, if they want to eat Kytniot, the legumes, whether it's rice, whether it's any other legumes, chickpeas, hummus, tchina, peas, right, whatever it may be, corn, chadi, it's all kosher for Pesach, kosher for Passover. Why is that? Because you left the country, you're gone, and you came to a country which has really no custom because it's all mixed up. It's a big smorgasbord. There's no right. So one person over here asked me when I told him about these things. This guy. So he asked me, he says, I won't mention his name, but he asked me, he says, I went to, when you told me this thing, he says, I went to I called the synagogue of, over there in Eretz Israel, in Lod, the Georgian synagogue in Lod. Chacham Raphael, used to be the, So he says, I asked him over there about these things, and they told me that it's not like that. So I told him, I said, do you really think that these people over there, they study these books that I'm telling you? They haven't opened any of these books in their life. They never opened. They don't know nothing about that. You know what I'm saying? What I mean to say is that some people don't realize the halacha is like a profession, You have to when it comes to halacha, you have to be a professional. What does that mean? You got to open books, and see what's going on. You can't just say, I don't think that's the way it is. What do you mean you don't think? Who cares about what you think? Open the books and see what's going on there. Mm-hmm. You have to learn. It's a profession. You have to be trained for that. So he thinks, just because they have a big synagogue over there, so they're all like poskim over there, halakhic authorities. What authorities are they? They barely know how to open these books. They never open one of these books in their lives. So I told him, I said, that doesn't really say much, because this, over there, some Georgian rabbi told you, that you cannot have that. Does he know all these things that I'm telling you? He doesn't know these books. He doesn't know. He doesn't have all his tradition. So why listen to him? Why? Just because he's got a big beard, or he's got a big synagogue? That doesn't make you into a posek. That's not the way it works. So bottom line, right, is like this, as we said, that when it comes to eating legumes, Ashkenazim, they don't eat it. Right? Nobody does in the Ashkenazi world. It's a taboo subject, over there. They don't touch that stuff. When it comes to wherever they may be, right, whether they're in America, whether they're in Israel or any other place, or Europe or whatever it is, they don't touch that stuff. By the way, even them, there are leniencies regarding this, regarding Kytniot. One leniency is like this, right? That you don't have to sell it like you sell chametz. You could keep it in your house and not eat it. Even the Ashkenazim are allowed to do that.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Another thing is also Ashkenazim, says the Mishnah Berurah, which is one of the big poskim, that if you mix two things together, Kytniot, legumes, and some other thing, if the majority is not Kytniot, it's something else, it gets nullified. You can eat it. So therefore, there are also quite a great deal of leniencies as well for the Ashkenazim as well when it comes to legumes. There are some things they're allowed to do. You don't have to sell it, as we said. We mentioned it. So, but when it comes to the Sephardim, right, that's already something else. What does that mean? That the only Sephardim that should not have legumes, you know who they are? People who are still in the old country, where they used to be, They're still living in Morocco. They're still living in Tbilisi, I don't know, God knows where, right? They're still living in Tashkent. But Tashkent, they ate over there rice. They ate. Baruch Hashem, they ate over there. And they eat also over here. No problem. But if you're living in a place like that where, or Morocco you were living, a place like that where they didn't eat, you still have to keep that custom because you're still there. So nothing has changed. Over there, they don't eat it. The whole community doesn't eat over there. Let's just say something else. But once you moved now, you went to a different place, you migrated, you went to Europe, you went to America, you went to Canada, you went to Eretz Israel. So once you do that, now it's a free-for-all, right? You can do whatever you want. Why is that? Because you went to a place where there's really no custom, there's no established custom there. Except Eretz Israel. Right? Eretz Israel, there is an established custom. The custom is to be lenient, obviously. That's what it is. To eat legumes over there. So if they eat rice over there, no problem. All the Sfarim, except the ones who think that they're still in the old country, nostalgia, nostalgia is not what it used to be, there's a joke like that, right? So they're living a nostalgic lifestyle, but according to what they are now, even though they don't know, they don't have to keep that,
Right.
You know what I mean? So the bottom line is, that they don't have to keep these things. That's the way it works. Okay, very good. So I think we understand, right? So bottom line is that all the Georgian Jews, right, and the Moroccans that are listening to us over here, you can go and have rice for Pesach. Mm-hmm. No problem. Just make sure it's nice and clean. No fillers and no additives there. Carolina, things like this, right? Rice like that, very good. You can have it. And even though some rabbis will tell you, but you can't do that, it's our mama, papa, our forefathers, didn't
right.
eat, Tell them, go back to your forefathers, go back there, Go back there and you can do what you want. But over here in America, our forefathers are already history, right? That's history, Baruch Hashem. We respect history, but
yes.
we don't have to keep it. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, amen ve'amen. Chazak u'baruch. Be blessed, wealth, health, and happiness. Amen ve'amen.